All right, in this video, we have a chance to make an impact today, Mr. Crypto.
I'm nervous.
I think we can advance some literary theory here on Leo Tolstoy. Let's talk about it today. All right, welcome to the Codex Cantina. I am Una.
And I am too much crypto. I've been waiting all day to say that.
And today we're looking at How Much Land Does a Man Need by Leo Tolstoy, published in 1886. Now, this is post-religious crisis Tolstoy, which we're focusing on this year, right? So we said after 1880, he kind of went through this huge, who am I? What does life mean? What does the Bible mean? That's what we're digging in on. And this week we've got a really big chance here where I thought this was just going to be a story on greed. I've read this piece before, Mr. Crypto. And in the time, I was like, okay, this is about the root of all money is evil, paraphrased, yada, yada, yada. I think you and I have a much bigger thing to talk about this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one is the obvious one. That one's the easy answer, and not to be, degrading or negative to anybody else, but that's the simple answer. That's something that you can quickly ascertain and you can use and say, I understand what this means. This is what he was going for.
Well, and I think it is what he's going for. I think, though, as a result of being a human being, when you write your past experiences, what you're really into, aka the Bible for Tolstoy at this point in time in his life, it's going to reveal certain parts about you and your belief system because you're going to typically project them into the story. And I think we have that here when it comes to masculinity and Tolstoy's view on the man's role in a family. Specifically, I've seen a lot of writing on this for Anna Karenina and War and Peace. You don't see it with the religious version of Tolstoy. So we're going to break that down today.
I think that it's subtle because a lot of times an author has a purpose for their piece, but just because of being a human and emotional creature and how you're feeling that day and what's going on in your life, you're going to have some things bleed through into your writing that you may not have intended. And I think this is one of those pieces where, yes, he was trying to get the point across. We know that it's been beaten to death. It's on videos. It's in lectures. It's, written in curriculums that this is the piece to use to teach about greed. But there's some subtle nuances that I think that we can get out of this that we're going to try to go over today.
So in terms of the summary, this plot is really straightforward. Post-1880, Tolstoy realized he wanted to write for the peasant. He realized he wanted to write for the common man and make things very accessible. So this story, in terms of a quick plot summary, is not difficult to interpret. Basically, the idea is Pam, he's this peasant guy that does a lot of farming. He gets tempted by the devil because of his outlandish statement that if he had enough land, he wouldn't be tempted for more. And he goes through 3 different land dwellings, kind of growing his land, looking for more, constantly, being brought in by greed, and eventually passing out, dying from greed of trying for too much, is kind of the story, right? And it's very easy to say, okay, this story has, the money is the root of all evil is at the core of it. And I think that's what he wrote this for. I don't disagree with that. I'm going to go a step deeper, though.
You think it's just money, though? I think it's...
Let's talk about that.
I think it's the want.
Story opens up, all right? We've seen this before with Ivan Ilyich.
Yeah.
With the opening chapter not completely aligning with the rest of the book. We open up with the 2 sisters talking about city life and the rural life, and then we never come back to them.
Yeah, and that really kind of disappoints me, and that's just kind of, I think, a literary critique real quick that upsets me, is that it never had a payoff, and I know that it was trying to, set the stage for the story, but I thought the story was going to go somewhere completely different, down an economic venue of have and have-nots, or rural versus urban, and while I think the story is good, I didn't like how it began.
No, it absolutely sets you up for a different problem in the same way that we saw with Ivan Ilyich, right? We realize and recognize that opening chapter is about setting up society. Why here? And the problem is if we just focus on the greed aspect, we miss this point.
Exactly.
So when it comes to masculinity, we have a lot of different masks or views that we can put on this. We've got the Hollywood view. Hemingway has his version of what masculinity means. Feminists have their version of what a man ought to bring to a relationship. Let's look at what Tolstoy's version is, post-religious crisis.
Okay, and I think one thing to note is that this also is going to change for the things you just said, but also culturally as well.
Okay, so we see Pam. No idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Pay him. Pay him. There's greed right there. Did we just figure it out?
No, because that's got to be a translation issue. But that is kind of funny. Pay him. All right, so I'm going to say that for the rest of this video. Pay him.
Pay him.
He goes on this journey, does he not?
Yeah.
Would you say he covets his neighbor's land in this piece?
Totally.
How often does he talk to his wife about what they ought to do?
Never.
Well, he does in the beginning, right? But then it becomes, she just drops out of the narrative completely, which I think throws a lot of people for a loop. How often did he talk to God about these decisions?
At the end.
And is it fair to say that he kind of led his family into this? He led his family forward.
Astray. Sure.
Okay. So what I want to look at is the definition of what a man is, not my view, but what Tolstoy's view is, and I think it aligns perfectly with what a biblical definition of a man is. We know everything post-1880 is basically dedicated to the Bible, right?
Yes.
We're seeing that here, and I don't think many people have written about this. And I think we can really advance the theory here, or at least get people thinking and talking about this more. And I think you and I need to be using this as we kind of start to break down more Tolstoy post-1880 for this year. So we have the wife saying, and we need not bow to anyone. Okay, and I think that's one of the most important parts of this piece. Because, first of all, let me turn this over to you. Why? Why do you think that line was specifically put there, and why that's exactly when the devil comes out?
I haven't thought about it.
So if you think about it, they're talking about submitting to authority. We bow to no one. Okay? And Tolstoy was extremely into religion at this point in time, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to give to you the two verses that I think unlocked this for me. And again, I think he was writing about greed, but with such a heavy, detailed life in the Bible, this is going to come out subconsciously. And watch how well this lines up in the story. Exodus chapter 34, verses 23 through 25, or 23 through 24. 3 times a year, all your men are to appear before the sovereign Lord, the God of Israel. I will drive out nations before you and enlarge your territory, and no one will covet your land when you go up 3 times each year to appear before your Lord, your God. Let's break this down. You ready for this one?
Yep.
So first, it calls out men must appear here. And the wording is extremely precise because you've heard the joke, I'm looking for a man, but I can't find one before, right?
Yeah.
Ezekiel chapter 22, that comes from the Bible. Okay? I looked for someone among them who would build up the wall and stand before me in the gap on behalf of the land, so I would not have to destroy it. But I found no one. And if you go into the backstory here, you'll find out there's a bunch of people here, but they're saying there's no man here. Okay, and there's a big difference between what the Bible says a man should be as opposed to just a male. Okay, the man's supposed to be the pastor of the family. He's supposed to lead the family. He's supposed to be the one that they turn to, but only if he submits to the sovereign God himself is what the definition of a biblical man is. Okay, so we may have a translation thing here, but you'll notice the point. You'll notice the story is not how much land do people need, not how much land does a peasant need or does a farmer need. It's how much land does a man need. Yeah. I don't know what the original Russian title is, but let's take that into effect here as we break this down. And we go back to he didn't really talk with his wife or family much, and neither did he talk to God. So he's not being a man at this point in time from a biblical perspective.
So the quote comes back, bow to no one. He didn't bow to God. So he's not being a biblical man.
Right. And to that point, he's supposed to bow to God 3 times a year. How many different land properties did he own during this peace?
3.
And how many acres? Now we may have a translation issue here because I don't know what acres translates to in the local Russian. We just have to go with what the English tells us. But watch how many 3s appear throughout the story. How much land did the original landlady own?
Yeah, 300 acres.
How many peasants were fined?
3.
2 to 3. How far did he walk to get to the next area?
300 miles.
And how much land did he buy when he got there?
300 more acres, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And how much bigger was his communal space land as opposed to his original starting land?
We've been double.
3 times.
3 times. I'm a history teacher, not math.
Okay. How long did he live in this new communal area for his second dwellings?
Was that 3 years?
He lived there for 3 years.
Yeah.
And how many? So he went on 3 journeys throughout the story, right?
Yeah.
On the way to the Bashkirs, how many miles did he travel?
300 miles.
On what day did he rest?
On the 3rd day.
Nope. Try again.
I don't remember then.
He walked for 6 days, rested on the 7th, just like in Genesis, right?
Oh, okay. I don't remember that part.
And then when he was, it was hidden because they said he walked for 6 days, and then they said he slept, and the next day he rested.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
And it was also chapter 7. Remember when they said that was the day for his rest? And they said he couldn't sleep. He had all these dreams that night. So on the 7th day, technically, he didn't rest.
That's right. Okay, yeah, I remember now.
Because he's having problems being the biblical man at this point in time. Okay? And once he was on the hillock land, how many miles did he walk forward at first?
Yeah, so 3 again.
Yep, and I think it was 3 to, after heading east to begin with, I think it was 3 the other way too. But again, could be translation issues there, but hey, 3's everywhere in this. And in Exodus, they say 3 times a year, men are to appear before God, right? And it wasn't until he was dying at this point that he finally called out to God and recognized him as his divine savior, again, from a biblical perspective. Right, and we have to go back to the other part where they say, I will enlarge your territory and no one will covet your land. Okay, so if we think back to the original landlady, when he bought the land, we had that kind of reversal where originally he was the one that was getting fined and he hated it. And then when he owned the land and all these peasants came onto his land, he wanted to fine them. Did or did not people covet his land?
I thought that was pretty funny, actually. I caught myself laughing out loud. I was like, that kind of serves you right.
Oh, absolutely. And then chapter 1, we have this quote from the devil. All right, thought the devil, we will have a tussle. I'll give you land enough, and by means of that land, I will get you into my power. So this is where Pam kind of fell into that, again, greeds throughout this piece. But we see him coveting land, specifically against what these 2 verses in Exodus had said. If he were a true man, he would not have that problem.
Yeah.
If he was a biblical man, he would not have that problem. And he said, remember, there is plenty of land, thought he, but will God let me live on it? I have lost my life. I have lost my life. I shall never reach that spot.
And he doesn't.
And I feel like when you have that background about him not being a man, not a peasant, not an entrepreneur, but him not being the biblical man, Tolstoy's view, right, in terms of why he made him make these decisions, I think we start to see some alignment here between what a biblical man's supposed to be and what Tolstoy's view of masculinity is post 1880. So I think what people get is, why does he not come under divine authority? That's the greed portion of things, right? Like, there's no question about greed is what leads him astray. Greed is what leads him to go to each one of these territories to try to acquire more.
It's a driving force behind the story, sure.
And that's the King James Version, Timothy section, where we talk about, for the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have earned from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. So it's not that money is bad. It's not that the land is bad in this piece. It's that Pam's fall is that it's the greed for more land, the greed for more things. Even though he even says he's content and happy at each of these places, it's when he's tempted with more. That's when you see the fall. You see him lacking the ability to talk to, in Tolstoy's view, the sovereign God. And that's what leads him towards the devil, towards basically his ruination and his family's ruination, right?
Yeah. I really like this piece of how it captures humanity and our struggle with material possessions, and how it encapsulates our need to better ourselves, but how much is too much.
I think I've got a quote here that late in life James Joyce wrote to his daughter, that this is, I quote, "the greatest story that the literature of this world knows." That's big praise from James Joyce, right?
Yeah.
I think this is an important story, and I think you'll even see this. This is like the theme when I think of like Greek mythology. Like, so many stories of Greek mythology have to deal with greed or hubris, of wanting to be the man, to show the world what you're made of. Like, it's a huge theme in that culture as well. And I like both versions of this, right? Like, this is comparable to Icarus, about, right, like his flying too high, flying too close to the sun, and his hubris getting in the way. Yeah. You've got that here with Pam as well. But
the
this
land
is very
his Achilles heel.
Oh, very nice, very nice. But this is very approachable, and I feel like this is very relatable, that a lot of people will get and be able to understand. But
well, it's written in a time period that, and I think that's why it's good for us to kind of explain this, of that land is something that's coveted back then, because most people are farmers. Nowadays, it would be money. So I think that it is good to kind of put that in perspective.
There's an old farmer saying, too, live poor, die rich. And if you wanted to take that the biblical route, that can be very true, where you live poor, you live within your means, and when you die, you'll die rich with, the blessings and grace, if you believe in that sort of thing, of course.
Yeah.
All right, Crypto, what's your rating?
Hold on, I want to go to the end of the story. The end of the story is hilarious. Like, did you not laugh out loud?
What, the 6 feet under thing?
Yes.
No. You laughed at that?
So the name of the story is How Much Land Does a Man Need? And at the end of the story, he dies, and they dump him in there, and he needs just 6 feet. After all of that, like, we have all this literary breakdown of all this stuff that we just talked about for 25 minutes, and literally the answer is at the end of the story, you just need 6 feet. Stick your ass in a box and put you in the ground. That's hilarious.
Okay, I guess.
I'm sorry. I laughed out loud the first time that I read it. Maybe that makes me a terrible person, but I thought, pay him. You got what you wanted, buddy. The amount of land you needed.
Well, again, let's go back to the story. How much land does a man need? The biblical man just needs,
just like every other man,
right? But the greedy person may need more. Is kind of the theme. So, all right, hit me with your ratings here.
I'm gonna give this a 6.
A 6?
Yeah.
Harsh.
Yeah.
Harsh.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I think that it's a okay story. I think that you can get just as much out of other stories for the idea of greed, like you said, in other literary aspects. And you have to dive deep into biblical literature and studies to get where we were with it. And that's not going to be possible for your average reader. So
okay.
I think that that's a fair rating.
Well, I think the easy answer is, of course, the Timothy section, which is money is the root of all evil. I think that's easy. I think the biblical man section, I don't know if anyone's written about that, but I think we might be one of the first to kind of show some of the parallels there. And I think we need to use this as we go deeper into more Tolstoy about what is his views of what a man's role is in a family.
and come back to this. Yeah.
Yeah, is it fair to rate this based on that? I don't know, but I'm going to go with a 7. I feel like all of Tolstoy's work that it's always been in the 7 to 8 range for us typically. Well, I guess you're now the poo poo pants with a 6, but but it's still 6 is still a decent rating.
Okay,
and I'm not trying to change your mind.
Maybe I should go to 7 because I really did thought the end was very funny. I did enjoy like when Payam got his at the end, his comeuppance. I laughed out loud. Like I was sitting there reading that. And I laughed out loud to myself, you know, and so I could probably give a better rating. I don't know if I could argue a better rating, though.
I'm not going to try and change your rating. Are we going with 7? Are you going with 7? Or are you sticking with 6?
I can go with 7. 6. It's that mid range. It's not terrible. It's not a 4 or 5. It's worth reading. No. But it's not like some of the others that we read. I mean, it's not The Rains Will Come Softly. It's not 3 Questions.
Right.
It's not some of the other short stories that we've done. It's not even close to those caliber.
Tolstoy is very solid. This is extremely Tolstoy. So I think when you get into Tolstoy and you're really analyzing it, like it seems to me like this caliber is just consistent. And I have a prediction that we're going to give the same ratings to the next piece. I haven't told you what it is. Stay tuned, and we'll talk about what our next Tolstoy piece is. But I'm very glad that we broke this down, and I'm very excited to see where we go with this masculinity piece. So I'm gonna go with an 8.
Oh, you just said 7.
I'm gonna go up. You went up by 1. Can't I go up by 1?
By the end of if we talk for another 5 minutes, you're gonna be at a 10. The greatest story ever.
I'm talking myself up in the same way you talked yourself up. Okay.
You talked me up. I'm going back down to a 6.
7.
So if you like this kind of stuff, please consider subscribing. We do literary breakdowns every week, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a week.
Yes. You stole my line. What am I supposed to do now? Am I supposed to do the piece while looking at my computer and not even looking at the camera to finish this video out every time? Peace out.
I coveted your lines.
All right, guys. Thanks for checking us out. Please consider subscribing.
Peace.